Every day of your life, you negotiate with someone. Some of those negotiations are small, personal ones, like what time your kids go to bed. Some are big, like orchestrating a merger or acquisition. In the corporate world, CFOs and finance teams negotiate all the time. Why? Because they handle the money. And where there is money, there is always negotiation. But here's the thing, most managers aren't great negotiators. In fact, only 4% of managers reach win-win outcomes when put to the test, according to research published in the journal Management Science. That's pretty shocking, right? But why is this happening? Well, there are a lot of misconceptions about negotiation out there, but perhaps the most unhelpful, counterproductive, and dated misconception about negotiation is that it's a zero-sum game. More for me means less for you, right? Wrong. Negotiation is how human beings solve problems together. A skillful negotiator is looking for a win-win solution where both parties walk away with a satisfactory outcome. A hardball negotiator might save their company some money in the short term, but people aren't going to want to keep doing business with them. That costs you in the long run, from suppliers who prioritize other clients to talented employees who just quit, or worse, quit, then sue. So, how can you get to win-win? How do you persuade your boss to increase your department's budget? How do you motivate your employees to hit their targets without hitting a burnout? Well, you're in luck. Dr. Eugene B. Kogan is a Harvard University thought leader and negotiation strategist, and he's here to share his secrets. Over to Jessica and Eugene.
Thank you, Alex. Eugene, welcome.
Thanks so much, Jessica. Great to be here.
So tell me, Eugene, what is a negotiation?
Jessica, negotiation is fundamentally conditional problem solving. We're trying to encourage executives to think of negotiation as a collaborative activity, not a competitive one. Even though, of course, all of us are rather stressed about negotiation, we find it an anxiety-inducing process. But try to think about it not as a win-lose, but as a win-win.
It sounds a lot like compromise.
It's not always as simple as compromising. It's about envisioning larger value before dividing it.
Then what makes a successful negotiator?
So a successful negotiator, Jessica, would have three things to think about. Be disciplined in preparing yourself, be empathetic in dealing with the other side, and be strategic about the way you envision the deal.
What does a skilled negotiator need to do to be prepared and disciplined and bring that discipline into his or her negotiation?
Discipline fundamentally involves restraining your instincts. We have all an instinct of going in. We know what we're going to do in the negotiation. Definitely take the time to prepare by thinking about your fundamental interests and the fundamental interests of the other side. Not the most typical, the first things that come to mind, but the underlying reasons why something is important to you.
So I think what you're saying is you have to look beyond what the person is giving you at face value.
Jessica, that's exactly right. It's looking at the underlying needs that we have beyond what we first say. So this may sound counterintuitive, but the first thing you say or that you hear in a proposal and negotiation is most likely not a person's fundamental interest.
They don't want to show all their cards.
They don't want to show all their cards, but it's often the case they just don't know. As a good negotiator, you're also an educator. And it's your role to help them discover the core drivers that actually brought them there and perhaps enlarge their view on what the deal might involve.
So tell me more about empathy. Empathy seems like a soft skill for something you bring into a negotiation.
And as a soft skill, it often has a bad connotation. Because, oh, I'm going to be empathetic, it means that I will be giving a gift to somebody. This is altruistic. A great negotiator must remember, empathy is not altruistic. Empathy is about understanding how the other side thinks. Empathy is not sympathy. That is one big distinction that has to be made at the outset. Sympathy is being on the other person's side, is agreeing with them, is saying, I not only feel your pain, but I'm on your side. I agree with you. That is not what empathy does.
What gain do you get from having empathy?
We all talk about being empathetic until we meet somebody we really dislike. And empathy goes out of the window. I'm telling you, it is an amazing thing. You train these executives in being empathetic and practicing active listening. Boom, they are facing somebody they truly dislike. They say, Eugene, my counterpart is simply crazy. How can I even talk to him? The only way to deal with him is to defeat him. No, you still have to be disciplined enough to understand how they think. And this is what empathy is fundamentally about. It's also understanding the logic of their argument, being present in their space, and therefore being able to map out their strategy to build value for yourself.
So let's talk about that strategic element that you mentioned. Tell me more about that.
Controlling your instincts is crucial when you're devising your strategy. And the key instinct is to fall in love with your strategy. It's a bias we all have. We fall in love with our ideas. But remember what that great philosopher, Mike Tyson, said, we all have a plan until we get punched in the face. So a great plan, number one, builds in an element of flexibility. Always build a plan that is flexible enough to respond to the unpredictable landscape. Don't underestimate your counterpart because they're also planning to somehow disrupt your plan, to disrupt your strategy. So the key thing for a strategy is to be flexible. And number two, be sure that both sides have a feeling of some accomplishment.
So both parties should be leaving feeling like I achieved something in my intention here.
Indeed. And I know this will sound, again, counterintuitive. You will be thinking to yourself, why do I care if you come away satisfied with the deal?
It sounds like a compromise.
It sounds like win-win.
Yeah.
I mean, a compromise means you're giving up on your fundamental interests and you're coming away saying, well, I could have had so much more and I just gave in. Negotiation is not about giving in, but negotiation is also not about ripping the other side off.
So Eugene, what type of negotiations might a finance leader encounter?
Jessica, there's two types of negotiations that we need to distinguish between, the external ones and the internal ones. Let's start with the internal. The internal can be either up or down, meaning you could be negotiating up with the CEO, with the board of directors, or they could be internal negotiations down where you're trying to motivate your team, establish your authority, and explain the strategy of your department to the folks who work for you.
So what should I keep in mind as I head into an internal up negotiation?
Number one, folks you work for have core interests, and understanding those interests is really important. They are interests that are different than yours. Number two, have the courage to tell them the truth. This sounds so obvious, but the higher up we rise in hierarchies, the more squeezed the space becomes for telling the truth candidly. To tell somebody, sir, ma'am, chief executive, chair of the board, you are not correct. So understanding your interests, understanding their interests, and having the courage to, in the old phrase, speak truth to power.
And on the other hand, when going into a negotiation with a team that you are the authority, what should you keep in mind for those types of discussions?
Number one to keep in mind is that it is a negotiation. When you lead a team, it's really tempting. Well, I just give an order and it's going to be executed.
Right.
How is this a negotiation? Well, your team has interests as well. And very few people, very few organizations have the kind of vertical of power where you say jump and people say, well, how high and when can I come down? That's not the way modern organizations work. And in this case, negotiating down is literally the reverse of the dynamics that you face when you're negotiating up. You have to establish a space where people can actually tell you what they think. For example, I've had a great moment meeting Colin Powell, the famous American statesman general, and he once said that when he invited his subordinates to his office, he would take his jacket off.
Just to feel a little bit more comfortable?
He said, I'm taking my jacket off so that the subordinates don't see all the medals and all the decorations on my jacket. And he's doing it, Jessica, because he understands as a general, he has total command. He's trying to lower the salience of how powerful he is, because he understands that the space is very narrow for people to tell him what they really think. There are various ways in which you can, quote unquote, take your jacket off. You can, instead of meeting in a corporate boardroom, you can take a walk. As a CFO leading a team of 10, 20 members, it's in your interest to make them feel comfortable enough with you to actually tell you the unvarnished truth.
So what happens when your negotiation is an external one with someone outside your organization?
Lack of trust and lack of accurate information. No matter how much you prepare, you're trying to get a sense of, well, what does the other side really want? Beyond what they initially say, which are their positions, right? Their stated objectives. You're trying to dig down to their fundamental interests.
And not having all the information at your disposal, they might be hiding some cards from you. You have to make some guesses.
And here comes the nuanced dance, if you will, of, well, who makes the first move? Ultimately, negotiations are relationship building exercises. And once you envision the larger value, you can then divide it, everybody gains. That's kind of the process of win-win negotiation.
So what type of external counterparts might I be negotiating with?
Two types of counterparts in a negotiation that you could envision. A long-term partner or a one-off vendor with whom you would make a quick deal and possibly never see again.
Why would I spend time and resources to negotiate with a one-off vendor? It seems very tactical and a game of hardball.
And negotiations are rarely entirely tactical, even if they look like that at the beginning. And the reason is very simple, because your reputation is the most important asset you have, especially in today's hyper-connected world. Try to see the possibility of this vendor becoming a long-term partner.
So we should always aspire for a win-win and look at the bigger picture for what could be beyond that negotiation point in time.
That's right. Aspire for win-win, be prepared for hardball.
If I came to a negotiation to win-win and they came to play hardball, how do I navigate that?
2 steps you have to take. Name the game, name the stakes. Be very transparent, very calm, respectful, and transparent. And just say, look, I feel you're putting me under a lot of pressure here. We're here to make a great deal together. I was expecting a very different approach. And what you are doing there, this is name the game part. What you are doing there is you're putting them on notice. You're saying, look, Jessica, I know what you're doing. and I'm just letting you know it's not working. Do you want to change tack? Do you want to, again, just take a break? And then you name the stakes.
So you're giving them a sense of disarm, like you're disarming them with their behavior.
You're on the one hand demonstrating credibility. You are not giving in, but you're also give them a chance to change behavior. And this is important. In negotiation, we talk about separating the problem from the person. You have a problem. The problem is behavior. It doesn't mean that the person is badly intentioned. It's very possible that they will just say, sorry, I'm just under such time pressure. The board told me to make this deal today. Let's take a break. Let's have lunch. Come back, start over. But then once you've given them an opportunity to change behavior, you've separated the behavior from the person, and they persist, you name the stakes. So you say, look, we've got a lot of value on the table. You show them that they're vulnerable. You reveal your vulnerability. Are you really willing to sacrifice this enormous value on the table, the value we can build together in the future? You're willing to sacrifice all of that?
And all this together will bring them to a win-win mindset, similar to the one you brought into the table.
Look, it has the best chances of saying to them, look, this is not a winning strategy.
So finally, Eugene, what should I take to my next negotiation?
3 things to remember: disciplined, empathetic, strategic. The disciplined part is about preparation, and preparation has 5 checks that I want you to remember. A bias check. Just remember to discipline your cognitive biases to how you think about the incoming information. Trigger check, your emotions. Think about what makes you mad. Prepare for those moments where somebody will try to make you mad. Team check. Have you checked in with your CEO about the mandate you have to make the deal? Have you checked with your team that they've given you all the right information to prepare as you go into that negotiation? Table check. Where you're meeting? What's the structure of the room? Where are you sitting? Finally, plan check. What's your strategy? How is this connected to other negotiations? Secondly, empathy. Remember WLP, what's the larger problem? To get to that larger problem, ask deepening questions. Questions that do not lend themselves to yes, no answers, but that say, why? Help me understand. Draw out more information from the other side. And lastly, be strategic. Being strategic means, number 1, envisioning the audiences for this negotiation. And you're always getting a reputation for the way you behave in this negotiation, which could be internal audiences or it could be external audiences. Think about the connections, explicit connections between this negotiation and other deals you might pursue with this partner or with other partners, right? How will other partners come to you later on and say, well, you've made this kind of deal with this company, with this vendor. Maybe you can make a similar deal with us on similar terms. And finally, always remember, be flexible. Every strategy will have to be adjusted. Remember Mike Tyson, and remember to always have flexibility built into your strategy.
So you're saying there is no such thing as a tactical negotiation?
There's no such thing as an entirely one-off negotiation. And I always encourage executives to think of negotiations as a part of a larger process.
Eugene, thank you. It was really fascinating to understand the art of negotiation.
Thank you so much, Jessica. It was wonderful to speak with you.
And thank you for joining us today. See you next time.